Hello, welcome back. This is the Terry Nutlove Model Railway Show. A light here for all things model railways. Now, before we get started, I'd like to mention that last episode was quite talky, and this episode we're going to try and push on a little bit more. But I'd also like to thank everyone who made a comment and also say that all comments are welcome. So please put comments underneath the video. You can say you like it, you can say you don't like it. All I ask is that you're respectful, because any swearing or anything that's other people might find abusive, I have to actually remove by the YouTube regulations. That's not me. So please make comments, but as I say, please be respectful to other people that might read them. Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to move on and put the back scene onto the half of the layout and progress with the tunnel and bridge. Let's make a start. So what we've got here is the 5mm foam board. It's cardboard either side with just 5mm of foam in the middle. Now this sheet here, I'll show you, is A3, and you can buy a foam board in A3. I would recommend that you buy this foam board in A3 size, because that way you're only going to have to cut the centerpiece, and we're going to use basically 2 complete A3 sheets and 1 A3 sheet in the middle with just a tiny piece cut off. So to make the back scene, you're only going to have to make 1 cut. So that saves you a lot of time and a lot of effort if you buy the sheets already pre-cut in A3 size. So as you can see, I've already cut a little hole here. This is going to be the tunnel, and this is going to go on the right hand side of the layout, which will be the left hand side as we look at it from the front. I've got this piece here, nearly stuck to the table there. I've got this piece here with the bridge hole cut. This is going to allow the trains to pass through. That will go on the left hand side. And in the middle, we've got a little piece of A3 that has just had the end cut to make it fit. So basically all 3 sections, when they're put together, are the same width as the foam baseboard that we're using. It's as simple as that. I'll just show you quickly how you join these, and what I'm going to be using is a glue gun, which is not ideal. It does join them very quickly, which is what I need for the camera, but if I was doing this at home with no pressure for filming it, I would just use the PVA glue sparingly. Remember that this is cardboard, you don't want to absolutely drown it in PVA glue. And we're going to join them with just some offcuts here that have come from the pieces we've got left over. And they've cut a little bit short so that they don't overlap. We'll show you that in a minute. Simple as a bit of glue. I'm going to use the glue gun to speed things up and use glue afterwards. Afterwards, I'm going to be using this super phatic glue from Deluxe Materials. Very good glue. I find this works extremely well. And being super phatic by its description, it soaks in, so you can use it after a glue gun, and it will soak into the edges and seams and make the job very, very strong. As strong as it can be. Just remember, of course, this is foam. We're using foam because it's easy to cut. We haven't got tools, so we've just got a craft knife. And that's the whole point of this. Don't forget, the whole layout is designed for beginners that don't have tools and are new to it. And this is just trying to keep everything simple. Of course, if you wanted to do this and take it to a show, or you wanted to put it in and out of cupboards where you think it's going to be bashed about a lot, I would recommend that if you have the ability to do so, you could put this back scene in with plywood, maybe a 6mm plywood. You don't have to. It would give it a little bit of extra strength if it was bumped and knocked all the time. But this will remain quite strong, provided it's not literally thrown about. It won't stand up to that, but in normal use, just being put in and out of cupboards, etc., it will be fine. But as I say, if you've got the tools and you've got plywood and you've got saws and everything, you could put this back scene in with plywood. That's an option for people a little bit more advanced that have a little bit more skills. But for the beginner, we're going to use this foam board. Okay, so let's turn the camera around and I'll show you how we stick it together. Okay, so This is the tunnel piece, and remember that this is going to go on this side of the layout. So we want the joiners to be on the back, so we're going to just turn it over. Just have a little think before you join anything up, and get yourself orientated correctly. That way you won't make any mistakes. So we're going to be using the glue gun, which, as I say, sticks very quickly, and that way we're going to do it in 2 halves. We won't try to join it together like this. You could join it like that if you were using PVA glue. Apply PVA glue to this surface and push it together and keep it all nice and tight, because you've got a little bit of time to move things around. Because we're using the glue gun, we've got to be a little bit quicker, so we're going to do one side at a time. And it works the same way. So we use the glue gun, we just put a little strip of glue on there. We have to act very quickly, position it. Once we push down, it's almost an instant seal and set there. There we are, that's set. We turn it over. This is the middle piece that we're going to join. We're going to line it up. There's a tiny gap on the bottom there. That's because I've cut these A3 sheets from an A0 sheet. So there's a couple of millimeters out. It doesn't matter. This will all be hidden under hillsides when the layout's completed. But your bought from the shop A3 sheets will all align top and bottom perfectly. So we're going to put a little piece of glue strip here along here. Again, we have to work very quickly. Push that on, make sure that's lined up. There we go, we just did that in time. That was just taken as I pushed it in. This is the disadvantage with the glue gun. It's extremely quick, but it doesn't give you any chance to line the pieces up. So that's why I say I wouldn't really recommend a glue gun for this. When you've got plenty of time, I would recommend that you just use PVA glue. So we'll just do the other piece in exactly the same way, and then we'll see the finished section. Okay, so we turn this back over now. And with the superphatic glue, we're just going to run a little seam of glue. This is quite an old one. It's not gone off in the tube. The more modern version is actually clear. This is sort of like a sort of mud brown colour, which looks a bit weird. It's exactly the same glue, but they've changed the formula slightly, and now this superphatic glue is completely clear. On this old one, I've just had this some time, it's a brown colour, but it does exactly the same job. Now we're going to leave this for about 10 minutes and that glue will start to soak in, and then we're going to attach the back scene to the main part of the board. Okay, so while we're waiting for that glue to dry, Desmond has just come rushing in. He was outside in the pond, just doing a little health and safety check on the ramp that leads down into his pond. It gets slippery when wet. Yeah, he's a massive Bon Jovi fan, but of course he doesn't go to any of their gigs without appropriate ear protection. So he's just asked me to remind us that we're using this Amazon Basics craft knife. It's got a retractable blade. It's very long and is very sharp, and it's got little break-off pieces. I'm sure people that have been in the game long enough are aware of these, and you can retract it, and when it gets blunt on the end piece you can snap them off. And he was just asking me to remind you, oh hang on a second, he's asking me to blow his new buzzer. So he's got a new little warning device which we'll hear from now on when there's a health and safety issue. Right, now you may well recognise that that is actually from Star Trek. It's the red alert from Star Trek, and because Desmond's got such long tail feathers, he's been battling the Klingons for years. So he's just asked me to remind us that when we have one of these sharp knives, don't ever try to break the blade off with your fingers, because if your thumb goes across the sharp part, you're going to end up in A&E. Use a set of pliers, just get hold of the craft knife, retract it to just the last section sticking out, and simply snap away the blunt piece. Make sure you dispose of everything sensibly. Make sure the piece you've just snapped off is put in a bin, because that still is sharp enough to cut you. And that's it. That's all Desmond wanted to say. I think he's going to go back off to his pond now, and we'll carry on with the back scene, which should be dry. Right, so the back scene has now started to set, the glue has started to skim over. As you can see, it's starting to soak in. This is why you don't want to put too much on, because this is cardboard. If you absolutely flood this with glue, you can cause a little bit of a problem with the cardboard. You won't affect the foam, but at the end of the day, there's a thin layer of cardboard either side of this foam, so you want to put some glue on, but you can't really absolutely smother it. So it's set enough that we can turn it over. What I've done is I've made up some little triangular pieces that will hold this, because now we're going to put it upright on the back seam, and these little triangular pieces will give it strength, and they'll also help us to align it while it sets. Again, we're going to be using the glue gun. If you were using PVA, you'll have plenty of time to adjust it. Because we're using the glue gun so it sets while we're watching it on the camera, we're going to have to be a little bit quick, and as I say, you will be taking your time. I'm going to do this quite quickly, so we'll just see how we go. So we're going to turn it over. Now this is the side that you're going to view it from when it's complete, and we're going to use these triangles. We're going to put one either end to help position it and keep it upright, and they're going to go on like so. We're just going to use the glue gun now to stick these on just quickly. So we're just going to run a quick bead of glue along the edge. Don't forget, we haven't got long. It doesn't melt the foam. If you put loads on, it would. There we go, it sets almost instantly. We'll just move this one up. We'll put another one on here. Okay, so now we're going to turn it back round again. And what we're going to have to do is make sure that these back pieces are inside the edge of the board. If we have this right on the edge, don't forget this is only held by magnets. The back seam here will push against the back seam on the other board, and the boards won't join together. So we need to just make sure they're all moved in just enough that the base foam board joins with the magnets. Now you can just do that visually. You don't have to measure it. And at this point, we're just lining things up just to make sure that visually everything is okay and lined up. Basically, we're going to run the glue gun along just very quickly to set this and hold it. And then we're going to go to the other end and do the glue gun again, and that will hold it upright. And I'll keep spinning it round, make sure everything's correctly aligned. I know that because I've tried this already, I need to have the back seam absolutely tight up against the track there. That's how I've aligned that. When we get up to this end, we're bringing the tissues up the table with us as we go. I'm going to do the same. Because I can't lift up and get under it, I'm just going to run a little bead of glue along the edge and push down. Okay, that has now set. It took a little moment to set because the hot glue gun is now actually very hot. So now we're going to use some of these triangles and just reinforce the back seam again with the glue gun, with the back seam piece. Right, we'll disconnect the glue gun before it burns a hole in the carpet, and before we move on, and then I'll show you the next part. Okay, so I edited the last part a little bit there because we had a bit of problems with the glue gun, was getting very hot. So now I'm going to be using the Superfatic, and I'm just going to be running a bead of glue all the way around the edge on this side. I'm going to turn it around and do the other side, and so I'll just do that very quickly. We're just running a quick bead of glue along. Okay, so I've put a bead of glue along everything. As you can see here in this corner, I've put a little reinforcing piece because this is set back and there's not a lot to hold on to there. And then if I just slide it down, as you can see, we've got a bead of glue that runs along the whole back part. I'll move that into camera shot. This little part here at the end, I'm going to make sure that this is reinforced, because when this joins, we're going to have a piece on the end here. And as you can see, we've got the glue all the way along round the little fillets, the little triangular fillets that reinforce it, and that will make it all very strong. So like I say, we're going to leave this for 24 hours, and with the magic of editing, we're going to come back in a couple of seconds and it will be 24 hours later, and then we're going to put the bridge and the tunnel in, and there's a magic little bit with the tunnel with a Pringles tube. So we'll see that in a second. So it's been 24 hours and the superphatic glue has set. It's all completely solid now. And what we're going to do is use a Pringles tube, which I've cut the bottom piece out of here as the tunnel, which is going to go there. And we're going to use a tunnel mouth, which I've made. Now this I've made from cardboard and simply marked everything. We're going to see a little clip in a minute with a voiceover of how I've made this. And that's going to sit here. Now we're just going to have to nip a little piece of this out with the craft knife to allow it to fit. And I'll do that now. And in the meantime, we'll watch the little clip of how we've made this tunnel.
So the first thing we've done is cut the Pringles tube with the Japanese saw that you can see on the left. Now this costs £3.79 from Amazon, but if you don't have one of these you can just use the craft knife and you'll need to make 4 or 5 gentle passes round the tube to cut the tube through. Be careful and take your time. Once you've cut the tube, mark either side of the sleepers 5mm and draw a line like you can see here and cut that through gently with the knife. Then test fit a wagon, make sure it all fits through, and once you're happy that the clearances are okay, proceed to the next part. If you're not happy, just go back and start again. It's only a Pringles tube, so don't waste any time. If it's wrong, start again and you'll get it right. Next, place the Pringles tube onto the cardboard, mark around it and cut that out carefully with the Stanley knife, and then once you're happy, offer it up to the Pringles tube to make sure that everything fits together okay, but don't glue it now. So I've cut the tunnel mouth to fit with the correct width. Then I've put it on the embossed plastic sheet and then I've marked that and cut around to make sure that everything fits. Then we brought the two together and stuck them with superphatic glue. With the strips of card you can see, I've then made stones around the edge of the tunnel mouth, starting with a keystone and working all the way around the tunnel mouth. Then we've gone on to make some edgings for the tunnels, which could be the wing walls. Now we've made 4 of these because that's what's required for the layout, and they're made in exactly the same way. Finally, I've made the wheels kit as per the instructions and used the poly cement, and then the result is what you see here. And to finish off, I've painted all the parts in a light grey emulsion paint to represent the mortar and allowed everything to dry for 24 hours before continuing.
Okay, so as you can see, this is the tunnel mouth. Now I've made this, as you saw in that little clip just a moment ago, and a lot of people who've been modelling for some time will say, well, that's not very good, it's a bit too proud and I haven't cut the edges in very well. And I've done this for a reason, because the point of doing this is that if you're new to the hobby, you've had a go and made something yourself. And this is quite important. And even if you think, well, I'm not really happy with that and I actually prefer to go and buy something from a shop, you've actually learnt some skills in making it. I've coloured this in with coloured pencils. I'll show you that in a minute. We've got some other bits and pieces to do and I'll show you how that's done. It's all quite basic, it's all quite simple. It's not perfect, but then when you try something for the first time, it never is going to be perfect. So I've done this in a style that I would expect somebody doing it for the first time to do. And that's fine. And that's what this model railway is all about, because it's about learning and experiencing things and learning new skills. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this and make the tunnel mouth. So what we're going to do now is use the Pringle tube and place it on. Get it roughly in the right position. We'll put the tunnel mouth in roughly the right position. And all we're doing is making sure that it's central to the track. And we're going to try a little wagon through it before we stick any glue on it to make sure that everything goes through okay. Then once we're happy it's in the right position, we're going to glue it in and move on to the next stage. Okay, so I've assembled the tunnel mouth now, and I've just tried it with a wagon to make sure everything fits through, which it does. You need to do this before you glue anything. Just make sure everything fits through it. I've used this wagon because it's the largest wagon, and if this goes through, everything else will go through, and it does fine. There's plenty of clearance in all directions. Don't just check the height, make sure it fits on the side as well. So now we're going to get some superphatic glue and go around the edges of the tunnel, front and back, and glue it all in place. Okay, so I've put some superphatic glue around the edges, and we're just going to leave this to set now. This is what it should look like roughly. We'll see it from the front in a minute, and we'll just leave this to set. And we'll move on to the bridge on the other side. Okay, so while we're waiting for the glue to dry, which is the bane of all model railway making, I'm going to show you just very quickly how I colour in these bridge and tunnel pieces. Now, as you see, they're coloured in, and in the little photo clips, they were just finished in this grey emulsion paint. They've been left to dry for 24 hours, and now I'm just going to colour them in with coloured pencils. That's all there is to it. So I'll quickly start with the red for the base brick colour, and you simply start going across at an angle with the red brick colour, and you want to try and get as evenly as you can over the whole piece. Now you're going to get variations in the colours, and that's fine. That actually makes it look more realistic. And as you can see already, it's starting to look like bricks, but there's a variation in tones in all bricks, so we're going to use some brown now. We're not going to go so mad with the brown, we're just going to sort of give it a lighter colour with the brown in the places where the red isn't quite so obvious. Now these are watercolour pencils, that's all they are. Just trying to create some variations in the tone so the whole piece isn't just one bright shade of red. And then to finish off, we'll just use a yellow. The yellow actually highlights the colours, so as you can see, as I'm going across the red there and the brown, it actually brings out the colours and gives a little bit of tone. I don't use a lot of yellow, just a tiny bit here and there, again going into places where you can see more grey than any other colour. And that, as you can see, hoping that the camera can focus on it okay, I think looks quite reasonable. You can still see the mortar joints between the bricks. It's highlighted the effect that it is a brick embossed plastic card, which is what we're using here. And I think that looks quite good. Now you can dry brush this if you want to, and we'll be going on to dry brushing in a later episode. But for a beginner, I think this is quite an easy way to do bricks. It highlights the mortar, you get quite a realistic effect, and the more you practice, the better you'll get at it. If you're not very good at it at the start, try just doing it on a piece of scrap plastic and practice with your shading until you get to the point where you're happy. Okay, so just before we move on, just to mention the fact I'm using this, what is called a self-healing cutting board. I've been cutting all the pieces that you'll see in a minute on this. It saves you cutting your nice table, and you can use this with any knife. I'm using the sharp knife, and I can hold onto it and cut across. And as you can see, it hasn't marked it. It's made of a special rubbery type material that can heal itself. I highly recommend when you start as a modeller, you get one of these. This is made by Humble. It's quite an expensive one, but you can get quite cheaper ones. They do exactly the same thing. Don't spend a lot of money on one. This is an A4 size one. I would actually recommend getting something larger. You can get them in A3, so that's twice the size of this, and they're actually much more handy because you'll find that this is a little bit small. But I would really recommend that you get one of these. Don't spend a huge fortune on them, but it certainly saves damaging furniture when you're cutting with knives. Okay, so we're going to move on now, and I'm going to show you the bridge because it should be dry. Right, so now I'm showing you the bridge. Now this bridge is a wheels kit, and I got this from a model railway show for about £3. The reason I got it so cheaply, I think if you bought this now new, it's going to cost you about £16 to £18, is only this part was with it. So the reason I got it for £3 is somebody's done exactly what we're doing here, and they've just used one side of it and then sold the rest of the kit on. So that's handy for us because we're only going to be using one side. The other side is effectively behind here. So what we'll be doing is using this part, which I've made just as per the instructions, and the parapet wall is going to go here to represent the other edge of the bridge, and that will be attached to the back scene in a minute once we've got the road on. And as I say, I've coloured it up with the pencils. I've used a bit of blue there for the engineering bricks around the arch and just toned it down with a tiny bit of brown. The only other point I was going to point out here is right on the end, because the cable goes round to join to the other board, where this piece will extend, I've cut a little slot in the foam and allowed the cables to just push down to the level of the ground through the foam. This is the advantage with this foam. We can cut little slots in it very, very easily with a craft knife and embed wires, etc. And that's going to allow us to put the edge of this bridge in a moment without affecting the wires. Otherwise, the wires would come round the front and they wouldn't be long enough to reach the other board. So just by cutting that little slot, they're now permanently in that position, and they'll reach to the other board no problem. So what we're going to do now is just start assembling bits and pieces. As I say, this is set. You just have to be patient doing these bits because you just got to wait for each section to dry. There's no point rushing it and trying to move on quicker than it will dry, because you'll just end up moving and disturbing stuff and you'll get nowhere. So just be patient, do a little bit at a time, let the glue set, then move on to the next piece. So the road top will sit on that. As you can see, the wires, if you can see the wires, just disappearing under the edge and coming out. And this piece will form the edge of the landscape. So we'll stick this on with some superphatic glue. Okay, so that's already taken to a point where we can move on. Some pieces will stick quicker than others. This foam ball does stick very quickly with superphatic, as long as you don't flood it. If you use a lot of glue, it will take longer to set. This is the road that goes over the bridge. It's just a piece of cardboard. I've cut it and measured it to size first and cut it. And we're just going to have a little test fit before you put everything covered in glue. Just have a little test fit. I know it fits. I've already tested it. It's a nice snug fit. Like so, that's all we need. And we can slot that down at an angle and it fits in nicely. Now don't worry, we've got a little bit of glue there on the back seam. That's not a problem. Because what I'm going to do once we finish this part is I'm going to paint this like a sky blue. But this little part here is going to be hidden by the other section of the bridge. We'll come back to that in a minute once stuff has started to set. And we're going to start moving down and putting the road in now that goes down into where the depot and the loading dock will be. So I've test fitted this little piece of foam board, and these are just going to be little supports. So we put a little bit of superphatic glue along the edges. Now I would recommend you always use cardboard or something like that, either this foam board or the cardboard for the road, because trying to make a road, if you look at the road in real life, it's relatively smooth. You might disagree. In your neighbourhood you might have some quite severe potholes, but generally speaking the roads are quite smooth. And if you just basically do the next stage of the landscaping and then try to put the road in afterwards, you're going to be ending up doing a lot of cutting and filing away, and it's going to become quite a lot of work. If you put the road in first and then make the landscape fit to the road, you'll find it a lot easier. Of course, that's not how nature works. It's the reverse in real life, but we're making a model railway so we can make things easier for ourselves. And that's just one of the little tricks. So we're going to finish this road sloping down into the middle. I'll show you that in the next piece. Okay, so a couple of minutes have passed and the glue is just starting to set. We're just putting this last piece of the ramp in. These little paint pots want to keep sliding down. So we just put a tiny little join of glue along there. Don't worry about it being too messy. I'm getting quite a state here, to be perfectly honest with you. Don't worry about this not being strong. I know some of you are looking at this thinking that's not going to be able to support anything. But when we get to the next part of the scenery, we're going to fill a lot of this underneath with kitchen roll covered in PVA glue. And that's the next part of the build. So we just hold that for a moment. We'll put some more pots of paint on there just to hold it down, or I'll hold it with my fingers, and we'll come back in a little bit when this has started to take. Just while we're waiting for that lower part of the road to dry, we can use the last of this little bit of tube of superphatic and stick the back part of the bridge onto the back scene. Now you might want to paint the back scene first, or put a scenery on, whatever you're going to do. You might want to use a photographic back scene, but I'm just going to put that on because it's done then. So we're just going to be doing this tunnel section now. I've already pre-cut the pieces. There's no great thing to it, no skill. I've had to cut a little notch in here because the tunnel mouth is very close to the edge, and the notch just allows this piece to butt up nice and square. Now there's no skill in that. I just put a mark with a pencil onto the cardboard. Don't forget that's cardboard, very easy. With the craft knife, just gently cut down at an angle both sides to create a V. As I say, all of these sorts of things are part of the learning curve. There's no big deal to it. We're just going to put some superphatic down the edge there. These are all part of making the model railway. I'll be honest with you, I've not done a huge amount of measuring on this. I've done a lot of it by eye. And if you were to measure very, very accurately, you could still come into problems where things don't quite fit. So just be prepared to cut little pieces out and trim bits off. That's all part of it. Okay, so we're going to bring this episode to an end because I feel it's dragged on a little bit. But that's the problem with glue and waiting for glue to dry and paint to dry, and that's not very exciting to watch, is it? So basically, let's have a quick look at the layout before we finish. So we've got the tunnel mouth at the end there, which we've made ourselves with a Pringles tube and cardboard and the embossed plastic. We've got the little cutting for the siding to finish, which goes right up to the back seam. So we needed to do that. We've built the road coming down to where the depot will be. And then we've got the wheels bridge at the end, which is made from a kit. And we've modified that slightly and coloured them in with coloured pencils. So that's about it, really. And in the next episode, it's going to be a little mini episode where I'm going to do the hillside and fill all the landscaping with PVA glue and kitchen roll. And that's a method I've used quite a few times. So the method I'm going to be using with the kitchen roll is very convenient. It's easy to do. It's very strong and very, very light. And that's essential on a layout like this, where lightness is the most important part. So all I'm going to say, as I say at the end of most episodes, is please like. If you like the episode, please subscribe. It all helps the channel. And please share this with friends or other people that you think will benefit from this episode. And all that's left to say is our usual catchphrase, which is, nice one. I'll see you next time.